Hi guys, I'm EVM and welcome back to the channel and to the Tesla Model 3 Standard Range Plus. Now, with the past few months that I've spent with this car, I've come to the conclusion that this is like a successful marriage, a long-lasting relationship. That's what I feel when I look at this car, because sometimes it does things which make you think, wow, that's brilliant, that's incredible. I can't believe they thought of that, that was a great idea. This is exactly why I started this relationship. And then, like a relationship, sometimes it does things which, quite frankly, drive you up the wall a little bit. Stop pressing that button. Turning the thermostat to 30 doesn't make the house warm up any quicker. Now, don't get me wrong, these are things which make you want to end the relationship like a successful marriage. But they are things which do drive you up the wall a little bit. But ultimately, I always think that a little bit of imperfection makes you appreciate the very good things in life. And that's what this is. It's an imperfect, perfect EV. Oh, and whilst I'm here, happy 13th anniversary to my wife. As usual, I'll look around the outside, then the inside, and then take it for a drive. For me, this is an inoffensive look. It's kind of American. I quite like it, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. It's nothing amazing. I think if Tesla never existed as a company and, I don't know, this was a Kia, for example, a non-electric Kia, I don't think anyone would go, wow, that's a good looking car. But to me, it's actually quite unassuming. I quite like the fact it's got no black plastic. I prefer body coloured stuff. The cameras, of course, for the Sentry mode and autopilot, that sort of thing, are dotted around. Doesn't really kind of stand out, so that's not a problem. I do like the flush door handles though. Good for aero, I imagine, and they do look quite nice. But there is one little foible, one of these things which drives you a little bit mad, although for me it is occasionally amusing, and that is when you're sat in the driver's seat and you're picking someone up, for example, let's imagine it's throwing you down, it's really raining. All you can hear, if they've never got in this car before, is them scrabbling around the door, trying to figure out how the hell you open the thing. They eventually get it, but ultimately it takes them 10-20 seconds to do so and they get thoroughly soaked. You're just sat there in the driver's seat chuckling away, but it is one of those things which gives the car a little bit of a cheeky personality, because sometimes, as I said, it does things which just are a little bit different, a little bit off, and people don't know what to do. I think the best thing you can say about the rear of this and most cars on the road today is that if you were driving on a motorway and you come up behind one in the distance, unless you knew your cars, you wouldn't spot the fact that it's a Tesla. So that's more of a modern car design thing than anything else. For me, I love the fact that it's got this full glass roof. This is one of my favourite features, not just from the inside, but from the back as well, from the outside. The boot is something which is a bit contentious actually, because a lot of people message me saying, I want one, I want a Model 3, but I'm going to wait for the Model Y because it's a hatchback. You know what? In the 4-ish months that I've had this, I have never tripped it up yet in terms of it not being able to do or carry what I want it to. I've tested all our camping gear in here, it was fine. I've done stuff for work. We've even been to IKEA and it was fine. Now, don't get me wrong, there's bound to be an occasion that I come across where I can't get what I want in the back of this car because it's not a hatchback. But you know what, for the one, maybe 2 times a year that that's going to happen, it's not really going to bother me. Yes, I might not be able to do a full tip run in this compared to a Model Y, but on a 40 grand car, I'm not going to do that anyway, if I'm honest. Let's get a little bit closer for you, get the camera to adjust the light. Now underneath, what I've obviously got a mat under here, you've got a ton of space. I mean, that is huge. That itself is the size of a smart car's boot, and it's not just for your cables. People always mention that putting your cables under the boot floor is silly because how do you get to them when there's stuff in your boot? Well, the answer is you almost never use them. That's the point. If I'm going on a holiday and I think I'm going to use them, they won't be in there. If I put it into context for a second, it's about the size of BMW 3 Series boot once you factor in the underfloor bit. Now, of course, it's not as straightforward as that because you also have the fruit. I'm not going to call it a front because we're in the UK. This, again, can do a medium shop, maybe a small to medium shop, depending on how big your normal shop is, but it's more practicality. Once you add this into the rest of the car, I really don't see a point of the Model Y for most people. It's not exactly the best bonnet I've ever come across. It's kind of thin metal, not really too much of an issue, and some would argue that it's actually a benefit because it's not weighing the car down of what is already a fairly heavy car. But no soft closing action. And if I shut it properly, when I do that, you can feel the metal, the bonnet kind of bowing in a little bit when you push it down. Again, it doesn't really affect it at all. It's not a big issue, but not exactly premium. Now, pretty much the most common question I got when I announced I bought one of these from a lot of people was, what's the build like? What's the quality like? And have you noticed any issues? Have you had any issues? And well, the answer to that, because Tesla do have a bit of a reputation at the moment of not great build quality. So is that an internet thing? Is it an urban myth? For me, no, it's not. And for that, I'm going to have to go and grab the camera. I should point out that Tesla have said they are going to sort this, and only the lockdowns prevented them from doing so far. But I spotted this on day one, on delivery day, and as soon as I walked up to it, and you can see here, the gap there is just not good enough. I can almost get my finger around it, and if it was sharp, it's not, but if it was sharp, you'd cut yourself. This side is the same as well, and it's not the fact that it exists which is the issue for me so much, because I've had other new cars that have had initial issues, but it's the fact that this is so easily spotted. I mean, I spotted this walking up to the car when we picked it up, and even though they're going to sort it out, that's fine. How did this get out of the factory like that? And not just from the factory, what about its pre-delivery inspection, of which I had to wait a week for? How did someone look at that and think, yeah, that's fine. He won't notice that. That's so obvious to everyone. Oh, right, now let's start off with the steering wheel, something which a lot of people mention in Model 3 reviews. And yes, it does look kind of boring. It feels nice. I have to say, it does actually feel nicer than it looks. But yeah, this compared to even something like a Polo GTI steering wheel, of which I used to own before it got nicked, it's boring, quite frankly. They can do better. They can do better. It's just plain and plastic, and that's not a great start. But to be honest, from there on in, it gets much better. The materials, soft touch, scratchy, not scratchy at all. This obviously a kind of wood effect sort of thing here. Again, fine. No real issues, to be honest, in terms of build quality. This thing ain't going anywhere. Very solid. I'll come to the screen in a minute. And of course, my all-time biggest pet peeve with every single vehicle on the market, black gloss. Now, I've deliberately not cleaned this in maybe a week, and I don't know how much you can pick up on camera, but it's already covered in dust. I mean, look at the fingerprints along there. They're awful, and it's quite easy to scratch as well. Now, storage. If you open that, phones go there. Tons of space, and you can close that if you wish, but I think most people just leave it open the whole time. This here, if you open it up, this is an optional extra. I have bought that. I suggest everybody does, so you can actually find things. Loads of space there. You can see my Sentry mode stuff, so we can record dash cam stuff. I'll come to that again in a bit. It needs one of these, because otherwise it turns into the handbag situation where everything's in one place and you can never find it again. Soft close there. It does take a bit of getting used to, as you've probably already heard. So if you do that, it doesn't work, which you might do if you're driving and looking at the road. It even tells you there, close lid gently. There we go. So like the door handles, as soon as you figure it out, as soon as someone tells you, it's fine. Cup holders, also plenty of space for the largest bottles in here, and you can get inserts if you want something a bit smaller in there so it doesn't rattle around. I've not really had any problems with that. So yeah, good door bins, good storage. And if we open that, let me get that out of the way, another little cubby hole thing there, of course, and you might not be able to pick it up too much, but another large space for all your junk. So in this car, you're definitely not short of space, and of course there's the glove box. Can you get your gloves in there? Now, as you probably already know, there is no button to get into the glove box. You have to press that button there, and then it finally opens up. I'm not sure why that is. I mean, it's a decent size, so that's good, but would it kill Tesla to put a button on there? Anyway, onto the seats. Let me get rid of that for you. These I find very comfortable. It's a Standard Range Plus, of course, and yeah, I like these. I've done a long journey in it and I've had no backache so far if you're just in the right position. It's, of course, as Tesla called it, vegan leather, or as everyone else calls it, fake leather or polyurethane. If I switch it around, you can see obviously the full glass sunroof. It's a very sunny day today. This thing blocks out pretty much enough for it not to cook your head. I've not had any problems in the sunny months that we've had, even during lockdown, and it's really effective. From the back, this is awesome. You can't really see it when you're driving because it's above your head, but this is a good, relatively unique thing. Now, most people will already know that you press that button to open the door, which is fine. But again, like the door handle on the other side, you get people doing this thinking, well, how do I get out of your car? So it's another one of those things which, once you know the Tesla way, you're fine. Now, let me get on to the screen, the touch screen, which basically does everything. For me, I can do enough with the controls that I have here. This, however, it's just missing one thing for me, the climate control options. You, if you're driving, have to take your eyes off the road to press it. And I don't care what Tesla owners say, you do. Now, there is ways around it. Once again, you know how Tesla do things. If I just turn that on for a second, it's going to get windy in here. You can obviously do that. I didn't know that until I looked up it recently. I could do this, and that's actually quite straightforward and easy. And if I hold that down, it turns it off. So once you know this, it's a bit better, but I always prefer a physical knob to do the basics, and I would consider climate control to be the basics. And you can do all sorts, but again, like a computer or an iPad, if you've never seen one before, you have to learn how to use it first. And most people don't like to have to learn how to do things in a car. Now, let's check at the back. Right, now I've put the seat in front into the position of a 6-footer, and plenty of space, but not masses. And look, I can do this because, are you watching Mercedes? There is no transmission tunnel, of course. It's an EV from the ground up, and this is one of the major benefits of having a ground up design rather than a compromised one like the EQC I've just mentioned. A couple of vents back there which are controlled slightly annoyingly only from the touchscreen in front, so the people in the back cannot turn that off. USB ports, of course, and in the back, I am reliably informed that it's a very comfortable car. You can just about get 3 people abreast, and you have this as well when typically there's only going to be a couple of you in. So the back is actually very good, and of course you've got the awesome roof above you, which is really cool, especially if you're driving around a city or something like that, or a night sky. So yeah, it's a practical car, and I'm going to kill my daughter. Arrgh. Actually, before I do set off, one thing which, again, I get a lot of messages about is the fact the speedometer's here and there's no dash kind of binnacle display there. I promise you it will not be a problem. You can't really get the driver's eye, I guess, from a camera angle, but you can absolutely see that in your field of vision. I mean, it's not the first time that a car's got rid of the binnacle in front there. You know, the Yaris was over there. There's several over the years that have done this, but that does not bother you. And ultimately, there is one thing which I think should ease your mind when it comes to using this and having that there. Now, that is that my wife got into this car and took it to work pretty much the day after we bought it. I showed her the controls and things, but ultimately, she just got in the car and drove it. And she had no problems whatsoever. I didn't even mention the fact that the speedo's only there and that might be a problem. And I think that's the key. If someone just jumps in a car they're unfamiliar with and just drives it with no problems, you're fine. Now, one thing that's worth mentioning with this car, which I don't think a lot of people truly appreciate, is, and bear in mind this is the entry-level Tesla, the speed! 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds. And that's every time you put your foot down, because it's an electric vehicle. You have that instant torque, which makes it feel a lot quicker than your petrol or diesel car, because obviously you'd have to be in the right, gear, or get the revs just right, or get your clutch control just right. So every time you put your foot down, you get that maximum acceleration, no matter how good or bad you are at driving. Now, whilst I'm passing this monster on the side, let me mention the size, because I'm on some narrow roads right now. It's not a big car, and again, my wife hasn't mentioned the size of it. Hey, but ultimately, it's about the size of a 3 Series. So if you think a BMW 3 Series is a big car, you're going to think this is a big car. But for me, this is just about right for UK roads. Once you get your toe down, as I said, performance, no problems at all. And to put that performance into context, it's a little bit behind, just a little bit behind a Golf R, when it does get a little bit twisty, the extra weight of the batteries, of course, that you don't have in a 3 Series, for example, does kind of make it planted, and I'm fairly confident when I do push it. But the 3 Series, to use that as a direct comparison, the BMW 3 Series, a 330i, for example, definitely handles better, and it just feels better. It feels more, I don't know, connected. It's not the best at handling, it's not the worst at handling, it's perfectly acceptable. It's actually quite good, but it's not quite up to BMW standards yet. Now, I briefly mentioned the running costs then. That is one thing that all EVs have, not just Tesla, but this is where Tesla have it over something like a BMW 3 Series or Mercedes, other premium manufacturers out there. You can basically get the performance of effectively something like, I say, a Golf R, a BMW 330i, but with the running costs, which are about half of a Fiesta, a small Fiesta at that. Another bong because a car passed me. So what I'm saying is, I pay, and this is easily recreatable by anybody if they're just slightly sensible with their electricity tariff, and the videos are in my channel if you don't believe me, all the calculations are in there, but I pay about 130, 140 pounds, let's call it 150 pounds, just to be safe, per 10,000 miles of range. So for every 10,000 miles I will do in this car, and to be honest any other EV, it will cost me about 150 pounds. The reason why I've never owned a BMW M3, a car I have always wanted to own, and even a used one, I could afford the car on the used market anyway, but I could never afford to buy the car and to run it. The running costs, not just fuel but various other stuff, made it not plausible. I couldn't justify it to myself nor the missus to own one. But if you can stretch yourself and afford something like this, if it's in your realms of affordability, the running costs are pennies if you're just even vaguely sensible, and of course like me you're lucky enough to be able to charge from home. Bong, bong, bong. Tesla have always known what an EV driver needs, wants and worries about. That is their benefit, the supercharger network. That is the huge reason of why people choose them. It's why I chose it, in part because I do plan on doing significant cross-European journeys, and in this it'll be a doddle. I won't even have to plan it. It completely takes it out of it, does the supercharger network, and ultimately it's why Tesla owners are so bleeding smug. And now I'm a Tesla owner. Quite a few people unsubscribed when I bought this car because I thought, oh no, here we go, another Tesla fanboy channel, and there's a lot around. But you know what? Why do you think a lot of car channels, not just EV channels, car channels around the world get one of these and then turn into a fanboy? It's not really the Apple effect in that, you know, it's a nice brand I want to associate with. It's because the cars are genuinely so good. Now let me mention a few of those build quality issues again, because there are some. I obviously told you about some on the outside of the car. On the inside, actually, it's a lot better. I don't really have any qualms. The materials, as I said, are fine. Even the bits that you don't really touch, they do not match or come close to BMW, Audi, Mercedes, anything like that, or the traditional premium marks. They're getting substantially better. I mean, over the Model S, this is a huge leap forward. If, like me, you're thinking about getting one of these and you were worried about that build quality issue, I wouldn't. Just make sure you have a bloody good look around the car before you buy it. The boot, for example, you have to give that a fairly decent slam for it to shut. It has no soft closing action. The doors aren't too bad. They kind of clunk rather than slam shut, but the boot and the frunk, or the fruit, they do. You can see where there's a bit of cost saving going on there. And you might argue that on a 40 grand plus car, you shouldn't. It is a premium manufacturer. It should have premium fit and finish. And it doesn't everywhere. As I said, it doesn't really win in any category, but it scores very highly in every category. If you can afford a car of this value and it's your first electric vehicle, you will love it. If you're an electric vehicle owner already and you're going from something to this, I think you'll love it as well. I guess it depends what you're coming from, but people generally see Tesla as a benchmark in EV world, and they are. I'm sorry, they just are. They don't tend to like Elon Musk, and I'm no fan of his either, if I'm being perfectly honest. But ultimately, in EV terms, they are. They benchmark. They are what pretty much every EV that comes out is compared against. I mean, the amount of times you hear the word, is this the next Tesla killer? Like, that's a thing. I've not even mentioned one of the significant benefits of owning one. The fact that it does get better over time. I knew this before I got one, but I've actually seen it for myself and went, actually, that is a big deal. And I've only had the car several months, so God knows what it'll be like in a few years' time. But when I got it the Sentry mode, which is effectively a dash cam, I had to take the drive out anytime I wanted to see any footage and plug it into a computer. That was really inconvenient and annoying. Now, I can view it on here. But it's just another reason why you think, that's great, is that? So it comes back always to that thing I said at the start. It's an infuriating car in some respects, but a brilliant car in others. So ultimately, would I recommend this? Well, if the finances make sense, and the company car tax thing is obviously a big incentive at the moment, you will like this car. You may love it, but you will like it. In terms of the range, the lockdown has severely affected my ability to test it properly. I would say, certainly given the nice weather we're having at the moment and the ideal conditions in EV world, 240, 50 miles are going to be quite easily achievable for my day-to-day driving. When lockdown allows, I will be doing another long journey, which I think is going to be ideal for testing this, because the WLTP, which is the European standard range of this car, is I think 254 miles. I think that's about right. My parents live 252 miles door to door away from me. So can I get to them on one charge? Well, without charging at all. Full charge, can I get to them without stopping? But on average, I think 220 is perfectly achievable. Obviously, if you drive it like a lunatic in the middle of winter with your heating on full, it's going to be less than that. And on the opposite side, if you drive it economically, you're going to get more than that. It's like any car. And I speak to a lot of people, obviously, with EVs. There's very few out there that have got one and didn't like it. There are a couple who had bad customer experience, don't get me wrong, but that's a problem with the company, not so much the car. If they can sort out that, this is definitely the benchmark for EVs, and it will continue to be so for a few years to come, I think. I think I need to work on my Tesla's smug face a bit more though. I'm at a service area and I know my chargers will be working, unlike the electric highway. Press fleets are opening up again, so hopefully you'll see more test drives of other EVs very soon. And please do subscribe, because that's what manufacturers pay attention to. That's what they use as a metric of whether or not they're going to give you a press car. Thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.